The ancient crystal felt warm in Kethvar's six-fingered hands as he carefully placed it into the scanner. Dust particles floated in the blue light of his laboratory on Zirion Prime, the galaxy's greatest center of learning. For 3 cycles, he had been trying to decode the damaged data fragment found in the ruins of Station Omega-7. The scanner hummed and clicked as it worked. Kethvar's large black eyes watched the symbols appear on his screen. Most were corrupted, but some words came through clearly. Words that made his breathing slow. Human. Earth. Terra. Sol System. These were names from the old stories. The legends that parents told their children when they wanted to teach them about courage. Stories of a species that could survive anywhere, fight anything, and never give up. But they were just stories. Everyone knew that. The door to his lab opened with a soft hiss. His assistant, a young female named Yexera, walked in carrying a tray of food. Her skin was the pale blue of her people, and worry lines creased her forehead. "Professor, you have been working for 20 hours straight," she said, setting the tray down. "The council meeting is in 2 hours. You promised to present your findings about the Outer Rim excavations." Kethvar barely looked up from his screen. More symbols were appearing. Technical specifications for something called a fusion drive. Energy output numbers that seemed impossible. And ship designs that looked unlike anything in current galactic databases. "Yexera," he said slowly, "what do you know about humans?" She made a sound that was like laughter mixed with air escaping from a balloon. "The mythical warriors? The ones who supposedly built cities on dead worlds and fought space monsters with their bare hands? Professor, those are children's tales." "Are they?" Kethvar pointed at his screen. "This crystal contains detailed technical data about human technology. Real specifications. Real energy signatures. And according to the dating analysis, this data is only 300 years old." Yexera moved closer to look at the screen. Her expression changed from amusement to confusion to something like fear. "That cannot be right," she whispered. "Humans are just stories. Even if they were real once, they disappeared 1,000 years ago. Everyone knows that." Kethvar pulled up another file from the crystal. It showed a star map with routes marked in a script he was starting to recognize as human writing. The routes led away from known space, out into the dark void between galaxies. What if they did not disappear, he asked. What if they just went somewhere else? Across the galaxy, on the trade vessel Silver Wind, Captain Zara Th was having a similar conversation. Her ship was a mix of different alien technologies, built for long journeys between distant star systems. Her crew was equally mixed, 7 different species working together in the close quarters of space travel. They were 3 days out from Korvash Station when the topic of humans came up. It started because their engineer, a large turtle-like being named Korks, found some old data files in the ship's computer system. "Look at this," Korks said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "Previous owner must have collected ancient stories. Says here humans could survive in vacuum for short periods. Could eat almost anything. Could learn any language in days instead of months." The ship's pilot, a thin insect-like female named Zik, made clicking sounds of disbelief. "Impossible. No species could do all those things. These stories always get bigger with each telling." Zara Th was cleaning her energy rifle when she looked up from her work. Her people were tall and gray-skinned, with long fingers good for precise work. She had heard these stories many times during her years of travel. "My grandmother used to tell me about humans," she said. "She said they were the only species that could make weapons from anything. Give them metal scraps and they would build a cannon. Give them rocks and they would make explosives." "Stories," said Zik, but her tone was less certain now. Their communications officer, a young male with green skin named Tefoke, pulled up an old star chart on his screen. "These trade routes we use," he said. "Many of them were first mapped by someone else. The records just say, previous survey, source unknown. But look at this." He highlighted several routes that led to resource-rich systems. Systems that had been perfectly mapped, with detailed information about mineral deposits and safe approach vectors. The mapping was too good to be accidental, too complete to be from automated probes. Someone did very thorough surveys of these areas, HFY continued. Someone who was very good at finding exactly what other species would need. Food sources for different biological types. Safe gravity wells for various species. Perfect trading locations. Zara TH set down her rifle and moved to look at the chart. You think humans made these maps? I think someone did. Someone who understood what many different species would need to survive and trade. Someone who thought ahead about what others would want. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from their navigation system. They were approaching the edge of mapped space, where their cargo run would take them to deliver supplies to mining colonies on the frontier. Beyond the frontier was the dark zone. Empty space that stretched between galaxies. Space where ships sometimes disappeared without any distress signals. Space that even the bravest explorers avoided. As Zara TH looked at the star charts, she noticed something she had never seen before. The trade routes all seemed to avoid certain areas. Not because they were dangerous in obvious ways, but as if someone had marked them as belonging to someone else. Corks, she said, pull up our long-range sensors. I want to look at something. The engineer's thick fingers worked the controls. The screen showed the edge of the galaxy, where known space ended and the void began. Empty darkness that stretched for millions of light years. But as Zara TH adjusted the sensor settings, she saw something that made her breath catch. Faint energy signatures, barely detectable, moving in the deep dark. Patterns that suggested ships. Lots of ships. What is that? Whispered HFY. Zara TH stared at the screen for a long moment. The signatures were too distant and too faint to be sure of anything. But they were there. And they were moving with purpose. I do not know, she said finally. But I think we are about to find out if the old stories are true. In the deep void between galaxies, something ancient was stirring. Something that had been waiting in the darkness for a very long time. And it was finally coming home. The alarm bells on Outpost 7 had been ringing for 6 minutes when Veltar finally believed what his sensors were telling him. The massive energy signature coming from the void was real. It was artificial. And it was heading straight for known space. Veltar was a Korvax, with gray skin and 4 arms that let him work multiple control panels at once. He had been running deep space monitoring stations for 15 years. He knew the difference between sensor ghosts, cosmic storms, and real contacts. This was definitely real. Control, this is Scanner Station Alpha, he spoke into his communication device. I have a massive artificial energy signature emerging from deep void space. Distance approximately 47 light-years and closing. The voice that came back was tired and skeptical. Veltar, run a full diagnostic on your equipment. We have been getting false readings all week from that sector. Sir, I have run diagnostics 3 times. This is not equipment failure. Something very large is coming from the dark zone. Energy output suggests a vessel approximately 2 kilometers in length. There was silence on the communication channel for several seconds. Then a different voice came through, Station Commander Grixtal, who only spoke directly to operators when something was very wrong. Veltar, transmit all sensor data to Central Command immediately. And keep tracking that signature. Do not take your sensors off it for any reason. As Veltar worked to transmit the data, he watched the energy signature on his screen. It was not moving like any ship he had ever seen. Most vessels followed predictable paths, using standard gravity wells and hyperspace lanes. This thing was moving in a straight line through empty space, ignoring all the normal rules of interstellar travel. The energy output was beyond anything in the galactic databases. Even the largest dreadnoughts of the combined fleet did not generate signatures like this. And the power pattern was strange, it looked like the ship was running on several different types of energy at the same time. 43 light-years away, Captain Ryan Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the galaxy grow larger on his main screen. After 300 years in the void, humanity was coming home. Ryan was tall and lean, with brown hair that had gray streaks even though he was only 35 years old. Life in the void aged people quickly. His uniform was black with silver markings that showed his rank and the battles he had survived. Navigation, what is our estimated time to the galactic rim? He asked. Lieutenant Sophie Blake looked up from her console. She was young, maybe 25, with short blonde hair and the pale skin that came from living on ships for most of your life. Her fingers moved quickly over controls that would have baffled any alien engineer. 18 hours to the edge of mapped space, Captain. 42 hours to the first inhabited systems. Our scouts report heavy combat activity in that region. Ryan nodded. The Devourers had been busy while humanity was away. According to the intelligence reports, entire sectors had fallen to the invasion force. Billions of beings had been killed or enslaved. The Galactic Defense Forces were falling back on all fronts. Any response to our arrival? Ryan asked. Monitoring stations are tracking us, sir, said Communications Officer Alex Stone. He was a big man with dark skin and scars on his hands from years of working with dangerous equipment. They seem confused by our energy signature. No hostile actions detected. Ryan walked to the large window at the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world his great-grandfather had been born on. Ryan had never seen it, but he carried images of blue skies and green forests in his personal files. Images that seemed like fantasies after so many years in the black. Sir, Sophie called out, we are receiving distress signals from multiple sources. The Devourer fleet is attacking 3 different systems simultaneously. Ryan turned back to his crew. These were his people, the descendants of humans who had fled into the void when the galaxy could not understand the warnings about what was coming. They had spent centuries learning to fight things that should not exist, in places where the normal rules did not apply. Which system is closest to our current position? He asked. Corvash mining colony, Sophie replied. Small population, mostly industrial facilities. But the attack fleet is significant, at least 20 Devourer vessels. Ryan made his decision quickly. Set course for Corvash. Maximum acceleration. It is time to announce our return. The Defiance changed course smoothly, its experimental engines bending space around the ship. The vessel had been built in the void using technologies that human engineers had developed through necessity. When you lived in the space between galaxies, you learned to make engines that could work anywhere. On Corvash colony, Governor Thexmal was trying not to panic as Devourer ships dropped out of hyperspace around his world. The colony had minimal defenses, a few orbital platforms and some patrol boats. Against 20 enemy warships, they might as well be throwing rocks. Send the evacuation signal to all mining platforms, he ordered his communications officer. And transmit our surrender offer. Maybe they will just take our resources and leave the population alone. But the Devourers did not respond to surrender offers. They never did. Their ships moved into attack formation with the mechanical precision that made them so terrifying. Dark vessels shaped like twisted metal, with weapons that could drain the energy from anything they hit. The first orbital platform exploded in silent fire as Devourer energy beams cut through its shields. The second platform lasted only seconds longer. The patrol boats tried to run, but the enemy ships were faster. Governor Thexmal closed his eyes and waited for the end. That was when something impossible appeared on the sensors. A single ship, massive and angular, dropping out of some kind of hyperspace that the sensors could not properly identify. Its energy signature was so powerful that it overloaded 3 different monitoring systems. The new ship opened fire immediately. Its weapons were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Energy beams that seemed to punch holes in space itself. Missiles that appeared and disappeared as they flew, striking targets from directions that should not exist. And the firepower was overwhelming, each shot from the unknown vessel could destroy a Devourer ship completely. In less than 5 minutes, 20 enemy warships were reduced to floating debris. Governor Thexmal stared at his screens in shock. His communications officer was trying to get sensor readings on the mysterious ship, but the technology was too advanced for their equipment to understand. Sir, the communications officer said, his voice shaking, we are receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. They are requesting permission to send a landing party. What do they want? Thexmal asked. They say they want to talk. They say they are humans. The word hit the control room like a physical blow. Humans. The mythical warriors from the old stories. But the stories said they had disappeared centuries ago. Impossible, whispered the governor. But the evidence was floating in space around his world, the wreckage of ships that had seemed invincible just minutes before. Sir, the communications officer continued, they are waiting for a response. What should I tell them? Thexmal looked at the image of the human ship on his screen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like a weapon that had been turned into art. Or maybe art that had been turned into a weapon. Tell them, he said slowly, that Governor Thexmal of Corvash Colony welcomes humanity home. Commander Lisa Hayes stepped off the transport shuttle onto the landing platform of Corvash Colony. The air was thin and tasted of metal and machine oil. Around her, the mining colony stretched in all directions, gray buildings connected by covered walkways, designed to keep the workers safe from the harsh environment. Lisa was medium height with dark brown hair tied back in a practical style. Her uniform was different from anything the colonists had ever seen, black material that seemed to shift and change in the light, with equipment built into the fabric itself. Her team of 6 humans spread out behind her, their movements careful and controlled. Governor Thexmal walked forward to meet them. He was a tall, thin being with pale green skin and large eyes. His hands shook slightly as he approached, and Lisa could see that he was trying hard not to show his fear. Commander Hayes, he said, his voice formal and careful, I am Governor Thexmal. On behalf of Corvash Colony, I welcome you and thank you for your assistance against the Devourer attack. Lisa nodded politely. Governor, we are glad we could help. But I need to warn you, that was just a scouting force. The main Devourer fleet is much larger, and they will be back. The governor's face went even paler. How do you know this? Because we have been fighting them for 300 years, Lisa replied simply. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Around the landing platform, colonists had gathered to see the legendary humans. Most of them looked like they were seeing ghosts. 300 years? Governor Thexmal repeated. But that would mean that we never disappeared, Lisa finished. We left. There is a difference. She gestured for her team to follow as they walked toward the colony's command center. The colonists moved aside to let them pass, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. Lisa understood their reaction. According to the stories, humans were supposed to be mythical. Why did you leave? The governor asked as they walked. Lisa was quiet for a moment. How could she explain 3 centuries of war in the void? How could she describe fighting enemies that existed outside normal reality? How could she make him understand what humanity had become? We tried to warn the galaxy about the Devourers, she said finally. About what was coming from the dark space beyond the rim. No one believed us. The council called us paranoid. They said we were seeing threats that did not exist. They entered the command center, where technicians were still working to repair damage from the attack. Lisa looked at their equipment with professional interest. It was standard galactic technology, reliable but limited. Nothing that could stand against Devourer weapons for more than a few minutes. So you left to fight them alone, the governor said. We left to survive, Lisa corrected. And to learn. And to become strong enough to win. She activated a device on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the air above them. It showed the Defiance in orbit, its massive hull gleaming in the light of Corvash's sun. The ship was clearly more advanced than anything in the current galactic fleet. Your ship, Governor Thexmal said, studying the image. The weapons you used against the Devourers. How is such technology possible? Lisa's communications officer, Sergeant Ben Clark, stepped forward. He was a compact man with serious eyes and scars on his face that told stories of hard fighting. Governor, he said, when you live in the space between galaxies for 300 years, you learn things. You adapt. You change. What kind of things? The governor asked. Lisa exchanged glances with her team. How much should they reveal? How much could these people understand? We learned that space is not empty, she said carefully. There are things living in the void between galaxies. Ancient things. Dangerous things. The Devourers are just one type of enemy we have fought. She manipulated the holographic display, showing images of creatures that looked like living shadows, machines that existed in multiple dimensions at once, and energy beings that could consume entire star systems. We learned to fight all of them, Lisa continued. We learned to build ships that could survive anywhere. We learned to make weapons that could kill things that should not be alive. We learned to adapt our own bodies to environments that would destroy most species. To demonstrate, she removed her glove and placed her bare hand on a piece of metal that was still hot from battle damage. The metal should have burned her skin, but her hand showed no damage at all. Enhanced heat resistance, she explained. Along with improved radiation tolerance, increased oxygen efficiency, and faster healing. Small changes, but they add up over generations. The colonists watching from the doorway made sounds of amazement and fear. These humans were clearly not the same species that had left the galaxy centuries ago. And now you have returned, the governor said. Yes, Lisa replied. Because the real invasion is about to begin. She changed the holographic display again, showing sensor readings from deep space. The readings showed massive energy signatures moving toward the galaxy from multiple directions. The forces that attacked you today were just scouts, she explained. The main Devourer fleet is 50 times larger. And behind them comes something worse, their masters. Entities that consume entire galaxies. The silence in the command center was complete. Even the technicians had stopped working to listen. What do you want from us? Governor Thexmal asked finally. Right now? Nothing, Lisa said. We did not return to ask for help. We returned to give it. She deactivated the holographic display and looked directly at the governor. But you should know, the war that is coming will change everything. Every species in this galaxy will have to choose whether to fight or to surrender. There will be no neutral ground. And if we choose to fight? Lisa smiled for the first time since landing. It was not a pleasant expression. Then we will teach you what 300 years in the void taught us, she said. We will show you how to turn fear into weapons. How to make impossible technology from necessity. How to survive when survival should not be possible. She turned to her team. Prepare for departure. We have 17 more colonies to warn before the main fleet arrives. As the humans walked back toward their shuttle, Governor Thexmal called after them. Commander Hayes. Will we see you again? Lisa paused at the shuttle door and looked back at the colonists gathered on the platform. Ordinary beings living ordinary lives, about to face something that would destroy everything they knew. Governor, she said, before this war is over, you will see more humans than you ever imagined possible. We are coming home. All of us. The shuttle lifted off smoothly, its engines making no sound as it rose toward the stars. On the landing platform, the colonists watched until it disappeared into the darkness. Then they began to prepare for a war they did not understand, against an enemy they had never imagined, alongside allies who had become legends. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the command center of the UES Vengeful Dawn and watched as her fleet prepared for the final approach to known space. Through the massive window, she could see the other ships of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet stretching away into the darkness, 150 vessels that represented humanity's answer to 3 centuries of exile. Kate was 52 years old, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that came from making life-and-death decisions in impossible situations. Her uniform bore the marks of battles fought in places that had no names, against enemies that officially did not exist. Admiral, called out her communications officer, Lieutenant Jake Turner. He was young for his rank, but then again, everyone in the fleet was young compared to the threats they had faced. We are receiving reports from all task forces. The fleet is ready for final approach. Kate nodded and activated the main display. The galaxy spread out before them like a spiral of light in the darkness. Home. After 300 years, they were finally going home. But this was not the same human fleet that had left known space centuries ago. These ships had been built in the void using technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. They had been tested in battles against creatures from outside normal reality. Admiral Morrison, came another voice from the communications console. This was Commander Eric Nash, captain of the destroyer Night Hunter. His image appeared on the main screen, a lean man with dark hair and scars on his neck from a battle with void-spawned creatures. Commander Nash, Kate replied. Report on your squadron's status. All destroyers ready for combat operations, Admiral. We have completed final tests on the new reality anchors. The dimensional phase generators are operating at peak efficiency. Kate allowed herself a small smile. The reality anchors were humanity's secret weapon, devices that could lock down local spacetime and prevent enemies from using dimensional manipulation. The phase generators let human ships exist partially outside normal space, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. Excellent. What about the Marine units? The display switched to show Colonel Amy Foster, commander of the fleet's ground forces. She was a compact woman with short red hair and the kind of calm confidence that came from surviving impossible battles. All Marine battalions ready for deployment, Admiral, Amy reported. We have finished final training exercises in vacuum combat and dimensional warfare. The troops are eager to get back into real action. Kate nodded. The Marines were perhaps the most changed of all humanity's forces. Generations of fighting in the void had produced soldiers who could survive in hard vacuum, fight in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and adapt their tactics to face enemies that broke the normal rules of physics. Admiral, Lieutenant Turner called out, we are receiving a priority transmission from Captain Martinez on the Defiance. The main screen switched to show Ryan Martinez, who looked tired but determined. Kate could see the bridge of the Defiance behind him, with crew members working at stations that combined familiar human design with technology that would have seemed like magic 3 centuries ago. Admiral Morrison, Ryan said, I have completed first contact operations with 17 frontier colonies. The situation is worse than our intelligence reports suggested. The Devourers have taken 12 major systems in the past month alone. The Galactic Defense Forces are in full retreat. Casualties? Kate asked. Estimated at 40 billion beings dead or missing. Entire planets have been stripped of all organic life. The enemy is moving toward the core worlds faster than anyone expected. Kate processed this information quickly. 40 billion dead meant the Devourers were accelerating their timeline. That suggested their masters were impatient to finish consuming this galaxy. What about the Galactic Council's response to our return? She asked. Ryan's expression darkened. Mixed. Some systems are grateful for our help. Others think we are invaders taking advantage of the crisis. The Council itself is divided between those who want our assistance and those who think humans are too dangerous to trust. Kate was not surprised. 300 years ago, the galaxy had rejected humanity's warnings about the coming threat. Now they were suspicious of humanity's return. Some things never changed. Admiral, came a new voice. This was Dr. Rachel Webb, the fleet's chief scientist. Her image appeared in a smaller window on the screen. She was an older woman with white hair and the intense expression of someone who had spent decades studying things that should not exist. Dr. Webb, Kate acknowledged. How are our technological preparations? All systems operational, Admiral. The quantum computers are running final calculations on enemy weak points. The bioadaptive systems are ready for deployment. And we have successfully tested the new consciousness interface technology. The consciousness interface technology was perhaps humanity's most remarkable development. It allowed human minds to directly control ship systems, making reaction times almost instantaneous. It also let crews coordinate with a precision that seemed telepathic to outside observers. New York side effects from the new interfaces? Kate asked. Minor neural fatigue in some subjects, Dr. Webb replied. But nothing that compromises combat effectiveness. The volunteers report that controlling ship systems through direct mental interface feels natural after the first few hours. Kate turned to her tactical officer, Commander Ben Clark. He was a big man with cybernetic implants that let him process battlefield information faster than any biological brain could manage. "Commander Clark, what is your assessment of our combat readiness?" Ben's enhanced eyes flickered as he accessed data from across the fleet. "All ships report green status on primary systems, Admiral. Weapons are charged and ready. Defensive systems are active. We could engage a major enemy force immediately if required." Kate looked out the window again at her fleet. Each ship represented years of development and testing in the harshest environment imaginable. The carrier Storm's End could launch fighters that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The dreadnought Iron Will carried weapons that could crack planets. The support ships had medical technology that could regrow lost limbs and repair brain damage. "Admiral," Lieutenant Turner called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council on Centralis. They are requesting immediate diplomatic contact." Kate considered this. The Council probably wanted to negotiate terms for humanity's return. They would want guarantees that humans would not upset the existing political balance. They would want assurances that humanity was still the same species that had left centuries ago. All of those assurances would be lies. "Open a channel to all ships," Kate ordered. Her image appeared on screens throughout the fleet. Thousands of human faces looked back at her, the descendants of refugees who had spent 3 centuries becoming something new. Something harder. Something designed for war against impossible enemies. "Attention all personnel," she began. "In 6 hours, we will enter known space. We are returning to a galaxy that forgot us, to fight an enemy that threatens all life, alongside allies who do not trust us." She paused, looking at the faces of her people. They had been born in the void, raised on stories of a home they had never seen, trained from childhood to fight wars that most species could not imagine. "But we are not the same humans who left this galaxy 300 years ago," she continued. "We are what the void made us. We are what necessity created. We are humanity's answer to the darkness between the stars." On every ship, crew members straightened at their posts. Marines checked their weapons. Pilots prepared their fighters. Engineers made final adjustments to systems that bent the laws of physics. "Today, we show the galaxy what 3 centuries of exile taught us," Admiral Morrison concluded. "Today, we come home. All stations, prepare for arrival." The Terran Expeditionary Fleet moved forward, its ships cutting through space toward the galaxy that had rejected them centuries ago. Behind them, the Void watched and waited. Ahead of them, a war for the survival of all known life was about to begin. The Great Assembly Hall on Centralis had not seen this much tension in over 200 years. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated areas, their voices creating a low rumble of nervous conversation. At the center of the circular chamber, the Council of Five maintained their positions on the raised platform that symbolized their authority over galactic affairs. Chairman Vexandra called for order with the traditional chiming of the assembly bells. The Zephyrian was old even by the standards of her long-lived species, with silver skin and the kind of calm authority that came from centuries of diplomatic experience. "Representatives," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, "we convene this emergency session to address the situation developing on our galactic rim. As you all know, we have received reports of unusual developments." Representative Thexnal of the Corvash stepped forward from his delegation's area. He was still shaken from the events at his colony, and his hands trembled slightly as he activated his speaking device. "Chairman, honored representatives," he began, "I come before you not with theories or speculation, but with direct evidence. Humans have returned to our galaxy." The reaction was immediate. Half the assembly burst into excited conversation while the other half made sounds of disbelief. Several representatives demanded to speak at once, while others called for Thexnal to present his evidence. Admiral Grix OK of the Combined Fleet rose from his position near the Military Advisors section. The Canthari was a massive being, over 3 meters tall, with thick armor plating and 4 arms that ended in weapon-adapted hands. His species had dominated galactic military affairs for generations. Representative Thexnal, Grix OK said, his voice like metal grinding against stone, "With respect to your recent trauma, The notion that humans have returned is clearly the result of stress-induced hallucinations. My analysis of the Corvash incident shows evidence of unknown weapons technology, but nothing that proves the involvement of a mythical species. Thexenael's skin darkened with anger. Admiral, I spoke with them directly. I watched their ship destroy 20 Devourer vessels in minutes. I observed technology that our best scientists cannot explain. Unidentified technology does not equal humans, Grixoke replied dismissively. Perhaps a previously unknown species has emerged from the outer rim. Perhaps the Devourers have enemies we have not encountered. But humans are legend, not reality. The argument might have continued, but it was interrupted by an urgent signal from the chamber's communication systems. The massive main screen activated, showing the image of a human male in an unfamiliar uniform. Honored representatives, the human said, his voice calm and professional, I am Captain Alex Stone of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. I am requesting permission to land on Centralis for diplomatic discussions. The silence in the chamber was complete. Every being present stared at the screen, trying to process what they were seeing. A human. Speaking to them directly. Asking for diplomatic recognition. Chairman Vexandra recovered first. I am Chairman Vexandra of the Galactic Council. May I ask, are you really human? Captain Stone smiled slightly. Yes, Chairman. Though we are perhaps not the same humans your records describe. We have been away for some time. 300 years, Admiral Grixoke said, his voice barely above a whisper. For the first time since anyone could remember, the great military leader seemed uncertain. Closer to 312 years, Stone corrected. But who is counting? Ambassador Helen Park stepped into view beside Captain Stone. She was an older woman with gray hair and the kind of dignified bearing that came from years of high-level negotiations. Her presence seemed to reassure some of the more nervous representatives. Chairman Vexandra, Helen said, I am Ambassador Helen Park, speaking for the Terran government in exile. We come before you today to offer alliance against a threat that endangers all life in this galaxy. Representative Kexmill of the Traitor Consortium leaned forward in his seat. The small, quick-moving being was known for asking the practical questions that others avoided. What threat? He asked. And what do you want in return for your assistance? The main screen changed, showing sensor readings from deep space. The readings showed massive energy signatures moving toward the galaxy from multiple directions. The scale was enormous, larger than anything the current galactic civilization had ever faced. The Devourer force that has been attacking your rim worlds, Helen explained, represents less than 5% of the total invasion fleet. The real attack force is still approaching from the void between galaxies. She manipulated the display, showing estimated arrival times and force projections. The numbers were staggering, thousands of ships, energy outputs that dwarfed entire star systems, and technological capabilities that seemed to break known laws of physics. As for what we want, Helen continued, we want recognition as a sovereign power and the right to establish defensive positions in key systems. In return, we offer military assistance and access to technologies that could save your civilization. Representative Yolandra of the Science Guild spoke up. The tall, thin being was known for her analytical approach to complex problems. What kind of technologies? She asked. Captain Stone gestured, and new images appeared on the screen. Ship designs that looked decades ahead of current galactic standards. Weapons that seemed to bend space around their targets. Medical devices that could regrow entire organs. Faster-than-light communication, Stone said. Medical technology that can extend lifespans by centuries. Weapons effective against enemies that exist partially outside normal reality. And defensive systems that can protect entire planets from attack. The representatives began talking among themselves in excited whispers. The potential benefits were obvious, but so were the risks. If humans had become this advanced, what did that say about their intentions? Admiral Grixoke stood again, his massive frame dominating his section of the chamber. And what guarantee do we have that humanity will not use these technologies against us? What assurance that you have not returned as conquerors? Ambassador Park looked directly at the Admiral. Admiral Grixoke, we could have conquered this galaxy already if that had been our intention. Our fleet could have destroyed your defensive forces and occupied your key worlds before you even knew we had returned. She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. But we did not come here to rule you. We came here to save you. Because when the real enemy arrives, you will need every advantage you can get. Chairman Vexandra called for order as the discussion threatened to become chaotic. Representatives were demanding to know more about human capabilities, about the coming threat, about the terms of the proposed alliance. Ambassador Park, the chairman said, you speak of enemies that exist outside normal reality. Can you explain what this means? The main screen changed again, showing images that made several representatives gasp in shock. Creatures that looked like living shadows. Machines that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy beings that could consume matter at the molecular level. The Devourers serve entities that we call the Void Consciousness, Helen explained. Beings that exist in the spaces between realities. They have consumed 17 galaxies over the past million years, and this galaxy is next on their list. How do you know this? Asked Representative Ziktar of the Inner Worlds. Because we have been fighting them for 300 years, Captain Stone replied. Every human alive has been shaped by the need to survive against enemies that should not exist. Our entire civilization has been built around one goal, becoming strong enough to stop them. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Humanity had not simply left the galaxy, they had been preparing for a war that the rest of galactic civilization did not even know was coming. What do you need from us? Chairman Vexandra asked finally. Access to key strategic positions, Helen replied. Permission to establish defensive installations. And most importantly, the authority to coordinate resistance efforts when the main attack begins. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of different species. This is not a request, she said quietly. This is an offer. We can fight this war with you or without you. But we cannot fight it for you. Every species in this galaxy will have to choose, resist or surrender. There will be no middle ground. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone expected. 26 species voted to accept the human alliance. 18 voted against it. 3 abstained. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them looked back at the main screen, where Captain Stone and Ambassador Park waited patiently for the formal response. The Age of Legends was over. The Age of War had begun. Battle for Garrison Beta began at 0347 Galactic Standard Time when the largest Devourer fleet ever assembled dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the system. Admiral Grix OK watched from the bridge of his flagship as enemy contacts filled his tactical displays, over 300 ships arranged in attack formations that spoke of intelligence and planning. All units, this is Admiral Grix OK, he broadcast to the combined galactic fleet. We are outnumbered 3-1, but this system cannot fall. If Garrison Beta is lost, the enemy will have a clear path to the core worlds. The fortress world of Garrison Beta was humanity's suggestion for making a stand. Its massive defensive platforms and strategic location made it the perfect place to test whether the galactic fleet could work together with their returned human allies. Captain Eric Nash stood on the bridge of the destroyer Night Hunter and studied the approaching enemy force. His ship was one of 12 human vessels assigned to work with the galactic fleet. It looked small compared to the massive alien dreadnoughts, but Eric knew appearances could be deceiving. Sir, called his tactical officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, enemy fleet is moving into standard attack formation. Estimate 18 minutes until they reach weapons range. Eric nodded. Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 1 operations. The Night Hunter moved smoothly away from the main galactic formation, followed by the other human ships. To the alien observers, it looked like the humans were abandoning the battle before it began. Admiral Grix OK's communication officer looked confused. Sir, the human ships are breaking formation. Should we try to contact them? Grix OK was about to respond when something extraordinary happened. The human ships simply vanished from sensors. One moment they were there, the next moment they had disappeared completely. What happened to them? Demanded the Admiral. His science officer worked frantically at her controls. Unknown, sir, They did not enter hyperspace. They did not explode. They just stopped existing. The Devourer fleet continued its approach, unaware that 12 human ships were now moving through dimensional space alongside them. The phase generators allowed the human vessels to exist partially outside normal reality, invisible to conventional sensors but still able to observe and target enemies in real space. Captain Eric Nash watched the enemy formation through sensors that could see across multiple dimensions. The Devourers were confident, probably expecting another easy victory like the ones they had achieved across the Outer Rim. All ships, Eric broadcast on the secure quantum communication channel, wait for the signal. Let them get committed to their attack run. The Devourer fleet reached weapons range and opened fire on the galactic defensive positions. Their dark energy beams cut through shields and armor with terrifying efficiency. The first orbital platform exploded in minutes. The second began venting atmosphere as its hull was breached in multiple places. 3 days after the victory at Garrison Beta, the Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. This time, the Great Assembly Hall included human representatives sitting in a section that had been hastily prepared for them. Dr. Rachel Webb sat beside Ambassador Helen Park, both of them surrounded by alien dignitaries who looked at them with mixtures of awe and fear. Chairman Vexandra called the session to order, but the usual formal protocols seemed inadequate for what they were about to discuss. The humans had proven their military capabilities beyond any doubt. Now they wanted answers. Dr. Webb, the chairman began, the entire galaxy has seen the footage from Garrison Beta. Your ships and weapons demonstrated capabilities that our best scientists say should be impossible. We need to understand what humanity has become. Rachel stood, her movements careful and deliberate. She was aware that every word she spoke would be analyzed by intelligence services across the galaxy. Chairman, honored representatives, she said, to understand what we have become, you must first understand what we faced in the void between galaxies. The main display activated, showing images that made several representatives recoil in shock. Creatures of living shadow that existed in multiple dimensions. Machines that fed on the quantum foam of space itself. Energy beings that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. For 300 years, Rachel continued, every human child was born into a universe that was actively trying to kill them. The void between galaxies is not empty space. It is filled with entities that exist outside normal reality, and they do not tolerate visitors. Representative Yolandra of the Science Guild leaned forward. You are saying that humanity has been fighting these creatures for 3 centuries? Fighting them. Learning from them. Adapting to survive them, Rachel confirmed. When you live in an environment where the normal laws of physics do not apply, you learn to build technology that works anyway. She manipulated the display, showing human ships under construction in vast facilities that seemed to exist in twisted space. The construction techniques involved technologies that galactic science said were impossible. Our ships are built using techniques we learned from studying void-spawned creatures, Rachel explained. The dimensional phasing that lets them become invisible. We learned that from entities that exist in multiple realities simultaneously. The reality anchors that lock down space-time. We developed those to prevent void predators from changing the laws of physics to hunt us. Admiral Grix OK spoke from his position among the military advisors. Dr. Webb, you are describing technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization. But you are also describing weapons that could dominate it. Why should we trust you? Rachel smiled sadly. Admiral, you should not trust us because we are harmless. You should trust us because we have already proven that we do not want to conquer you. She changed the display again, showing tactical projections of the human fleet's capabilities. The numbers were staggering. The humans could have conquered the entire galaxy in a matter of months if they had chosen to do so. We could have destroyed your defensive fleets and occupied your core worlds before announcing our return, Rachel said. Instead, we chose to help you fight an enemy that threatens all life. That should tell you something about our intentions. Representative Kexmill of the Trader Consortium raised a practical question. Dr. Webb, you speak of humanity adapting to survive in the void. Can you be more specific about these adaptations? Rachel hesitated. This was the part of the explanation that she had been dreading. How could she make them understand what humanity had become without terrifying them? Our adaptations are both technological and biological, she said carefully. Living in the void required us to modify our own physiology to survive environments that would kill most organic life. She activated a medical scanner and held it over her own hand. The readout showed biological functions that were clearly not within normal human parameters. Enhanced radiation resistance. Improved oxygen efficiency that allows us to survive in hard vacuum for extended periods. Accelerated healing. Increased neural processing speed. And modifications to our sensory systems that allow us to perceive dimensional anomalies. The representatives were silent as they processed this information. The humans were no longer the same species that had left the galaxy centuries ago. But the most significant change, Rachel continued, is psychological. Every human alive has been shaped by constant exposure to existential threats. We think differently than we did 300 years ago. Commander Ben Clark stepped forward from the human delegation. His cybernetic implants were clearly visible, marking him as someone who had gone even further in adapting to hostile environments. Representatives, he said, Dr. Webb is being diplomatic. Let me be more direct. Humanity has become a species designed for war against enemies that should not exist. We are no longer the explorers and traders who left this galaxy centuries ago. We are weapons forged by necessity. The blunt statement sent a ripple of unease through the assembly. Several representatives began talking quietly among themselves. Chairman Vexandra called for order. Commander Clark, are you saying that humanity represents a threat to galactic peace? I am saying that humanity represents the only chance galactic peace has of surviving what is coming, Ben replied. Because the real enemy is not the devourer fleets you have been fighting. The main display changed to show long-range sensor readings from the edge of the galaxy. The readings showed energy signatures that dwarfed entire star systems, moving through space in patterns that suggested vast intelligence. The devourers are servants, Rachel explained, retaking control of the briefing. They serve entities we call the void consciousness, beings that exist in the spaces between realities. These entities have consumed 17 galaxies over the past million years. She manipulated the display, showing a map of local galactic clusters. 17 areas were marked in red, indicating dead zones where nothing remained but empty space. Each galaxy they consume makes them stronger, Rachel continued. They learn from the civilizations they destroy, incorporating their knowledge and technology. By now, they possess the accumulated wisdom of billions of species. Representative Ziktar of the Inner Worlds asked the question that everyone was thinking. How do you know all this? The answer came from Captain Alex Stone, who had been silent until now. Because we have been inside their territory. Because we have fought their servants and survived their attention. Because 300 years ago, they sent a probe into this galaxy, and we were the only ones who recognized it for what it was. The silence that followed was profound. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not left the galaxy voluntarily. They had been driven out by an advanced scout of an enemy that the galaxy had never even detected. You tried to warn us, Chairman Vexandra said quietly. We tried, Helen Park confirmed. We presented evidence of dimensional incursions, unexplained disappearances of ships in the Outer Rim, and energy signatures that matched known void consciousness patterns. The Council declared us paranoid and refused to authorize defensive preparations. Admiral Grix stood slowly. So you left to fight them alone. We left to survive, Alex corrected. And to learn. And to become strong enough to have a chance when they returned in force. Rachel activated a new display, showing projections of the coming invasion. The scale was beyond anything the galactic civilization had ever imagined, millions of ships, supported by entities that could manipulate reality itself. The devourer fleets you have been fighting are less than 1% of their total force, she said. The real invasion will begin when the void consciousness entities arrive personally. When that happens, conventional weapons will be useless. Conventional tactics will be meaningless. Conventional reality will become optional. Representative Yelandra asked the critical question. What chance do we have? Rachel looked around the assembly hall, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of different species. Most of them looked terrified. Some looked hopeful. A few looked ready to give up before the fight even began. "With our help," she said, "you have a chance. A small one, but a real one. Without our help, you have no chance at all." She paused, then added the words that would define everything that came after. "But you need to understand, this will not be a war as you know war. This will be a fight for the very concept of existence. The enemy we face wants to unmake reality itself and replace it with something that serves their purposes. If we lose, it will not just mean death. It will mean that life as we know it never existed at all." The vote that followed was unanimous. Every species represented in the council agreed to full alliance with humanity, with complete authority for human forces to coordinate the defense of the galaxy. As the representatives filed out of the assembly hall, many of them realized that they had just voted to transform their entire civilization for a war against enemies they could barely comprehend. The age of innocence was over. The real war was about to begin. The end began at the edge of known space, where reality itself started to unravel. Admiral Kate Morrison watched from the bridge of the Vengeful Dawn as her sensors detected something that her instruments could barely comprehend, a rent in spacetime itself, growing larger with each passing hour. "Admiral," reported her science officer, "the dimensional rift has expanded to encompass 3 entire star systems. Whatever is coming through is rewriting the laws of physics as it emerges." Kate nodded grimly. After 300 years of preparation, the moment they had all dreaded had finally arrived. The void consciousness was manifesting directly in their reality, bringing with it powers that existed beyond the normal laws of existence. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Begin final approach. This is what we trained for." The combined human-alien fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 2,000 ships from dozens of different species, all equipped with the best technology both civilizations could produce. It should have been an impressive sight, but Kate knew it might not be enough. Captain Ryan Martinez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as entities that should not exist poured through the dimensional rift. They looked like living nightmares, creatures of shadow and fire that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, machines that fed on the quantum structure of space itself, and energy beings that could rewrite matter at the molecular level. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Sophie Blake, "we are detecting massive reality distortions throughout the combat zone. The enemy is actively changing the laws of physics to favor their forces." Ryan checked his ship's reality anchors. The devices were operating at maximum output, creating a bubble of stable spacetime around the Defiance. But even with humanity's best technology, they could only maintain normal physics in a limited area. "Signal the fleet," Ryan ordered. "All ships activate reality anchors. We need to create zones of stable space for our weapons to function properly." Across the battlefield, human ships began deploying their reality anchors. Slowly, patches of normal spacetime appeared in the chaos, like islands of stability in an ocean of twisted physics. Commander Eric Nash piloted the Night Hunter through space that kept changing its fundamental properties. One moment gravity pulled down, the next moment it pushed sideways. Energy beams curved in impossible directions. Time itself flowed at different rates in different areas of the battlefield. "This is insane," muttered his tactical officer as she tried to target enemies that existed in 4 dimensions at once. "Welcome to Void Warfare," Eric replied calmly. "Remember your training. Do not trust your instruments. Trust your enhanced senses. Feel for the patterns in the chaos." The humans had been trained for this. 3 centuries of fighting in environments where physics was optional had prepared them for combat against enemies that could change reality. But their alien allies were struggling to adapt. Admiral Grix OK found his massive dreadnought nearly helpless as enemy forces attacked from directions that should not exist. His weapons could not target enemies that existed partially outside normal space. His shields were useless against attacks that bypassed the usual laws of energy interaction. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "human vessels are offering tactical coordination. They say they can guide our targeting systems." Grix OK swallowed his pride. "Accept their assistance. At this point, I will take help from anyone who understands what we are fighting." The battle developed into something that military historians would struggle to describe. It was fought simultaneously in normal space, hyperspace, and several other dimensions that had no names. Human crews used their enhanced perception to navigate spaces that changed their fundamental properties from moment to moment. Lieutenant Amy Foster flew her fighter through what her instruments said was solid matter but what her void-trained senses recognized as a weak point in local reality. She emerged inside the control structure of a void consciousness entity, her weapons targeting the quantum processes that held the creature together. Her attack succeeded, but the entity's death scream created a wave of dimensional distortion that threatened to tear apart nearby ships. Amy used her fighter's reality anchor to create a stable zone, protecting a squadron of alien vessels that would have been destroyed otherwise. "This is Skybreaker," she reported. "Primary entity neutralized, but we are taking heavy casualties. The enemy learns from each engagement." That was the terrifying truth. The void consciousness entities were adapting their tactics in real time, learning from humanity's techniques and developing counters. What worked in one engagement might be useless in the next. Dr. Rachel Webb coordinated the fleet's scientific analysis from her position aboard the research vessel Discovery. Her enhanced neural interface let her process battlefield data faster than any normal human could manage, but even she was struggling to keep up with the rate of change. "Admiral Morrison," she reported, "the enemy is systematically neutralizing our reality anchors. They are learning to manipulate our technology against us." Kate considered this information. The reality anchors were humanity's primary advantage, creating zones where their weapons could function effectively. If the enemy learned to counter them, the entire battle plan would collapse. "Dr. Webb, how long before they neutralize all our anchors?" "At current learning rate, approximately 40 minutes. Kate made the hardest decision of her career. "Signal Captain Martinez. Execute Operation Final Gambit." Ryan received the signal and felt his stomach drop. Operation Final Gambit was their last resort, a plan so desperate that it had only a theoretical chance of success. But it was also their only hope of stopping the void consciousness permanently. "Sophie," he said quietly, "prepare the dimensional cascade device. Set course for the center of the rift." Sophie's hands shook slightly as she activated the device. It was an experimental weapon that would create a feedback loop in the enemy's reality manipulation matrix. But using it required the Defiance to fly directly into the heart of the void consciousness manifestation, a suicide mission with no possibility of survival. "Captain," she said, "device is armed and ready. Course laid in." Ryan opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Martinez. In 5 minutes, the Defiance will begin our final attack run. We need every ship to provide covering fire and keep the enemy distracted." He paused, looking around his bridge at the crew who had served with him for years. People who had been born in the void, raised for this moment, trained to sacrifice everything for a galaxy that had forgotten them. "It has been an honor serving with all of you," he said simply. The Defiance accelerated toward the dimensional rift, its hull glowing from the exotic energies that surrounded the enemy manifestation. Around it, the combined fleet fought desperately to clear a path, human and alien ships working together in perfect coordination. Commander Ben Clark guided his ship through dimensional space, using his cybernetic implants to navigate by instinct rather than instruments. His consciousness was partially expanded across multiple realities, allowing him to coordinate attacks from angles that existed outside normal space. "All human ships," he broadcast, "begin consciousness interface coordination. We need perfect timing for this to work." Across the human fleet, crews activated their consciousness interface technology. Suddenly, 2,000 human minds were linked in a network that allowed instantaneous coordination. They moved as one organism, their ships dancing through space in patterns that alien observers found beautiful and terrifying. The Defiance reached the edge of the dimensional rift, where reality became so unstable that matter existed more as suggestion than substance. Ryan could see the void consciousness entities directly now, vast intelligences that existed as living concepts rather than physical forms. "Sophie," he said, "activate the cascade device on my mark." Lieutenant Sophie Blake's enhanced nervous system let her react faster than normal human reflexes, but even she felt the strain as she prepared to trigger a weapon that would tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. "Device ready, Captain." Ryan watched as void consciousness entities converged on his ship, recognizing the threat it represented. Energy attacks that could unmake matter at the quantum level struck the Defiance's shields. The ship's hull began to break apart under forces that existed outside normal physics. "Now!" Ryan shouted. Sophie triggered the cascade device. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself began to scream. The dimensional rift started to collapse as the cascade effect spread through the void consciousness manifestation. The entity's ability to manipulate spacetime turned against them as their own power fed back into itself, creating an exponential destruction pattern that consumed everything it touched. The Defiance was vaporized instantly, but its sacrifice achieved its purpose. The cascade spread through the dimensional rift, forcing the void consciousness entities back into the void between realities. The massive invasion force found itself cut off from its power source, suddenly vulnerable to conventional weapons. Admiral Morrison watched as the enemy fleet began to disintegrate. Without the reality-warping support of their masters, the Devourer ships were just advanced technology, dangerous, but not invincible. "All ships," she broadcast, "press the attack. Finish them while they are vulnerable." The final phase of the battle lasted only minutes. Deprived of their dimensional advantages, the enemy forces were systematically destroyed by the combined fleet. When it was over, the space around the collapsed rift was filled with debris from 1,000 enemy vessels. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Humanity had lost 30% of its fleet, including many of their most experienced crews. The aliens had suffered even worse casualties, with entire species losing their entire military force. As the survivors regrouped, Admiral Morrison opened a channel to the entire fleet. "Today, we have won a battle that will be remembered as long as intelligent life exists in this galaxy," she said. "We have proven that the void consciousness can be defeated. But we have also learned that the price of victory is higher than anyone imagined." She paused, looking out at the stars that humanity had fought so hard to protect. "Captain Martinez and the crew of the Defiance gave their lives to save all of us. They will not be forgotten. And their sacrifice ensures that this galaxy will have time to prepare for the next time the darkness comes calling." In the weeks that followed, humanity took its place as the guardians of the galactic rim. Human ships patrolled the edges of known space, watching for signs of another void consciousness incursion. Human scientists worked with alien researchers to develop new technologies that could detect dimensional anomalies. The legends had become real. The myths had proven true. And in the darkness between galaxies, ancient enemies learned to fear the species that had refused to surrender, even when surrender seemed like the only rational choice. Humanity was home.